Welcome to the CQC video training series. This is a spot topic video on the Action Editor. In this video, we're going to take a look at the CQC Action Editor. You may have seen it before in some of the other videos if you watched other ones at this point. It's fairly ubiquitous. The Action Editor is what you use to create your own custom user logic, that being you configure CQC to carry out a set of steps that you want it to do in response to this or that happening. Usually it's some sort of user input. In some cases it's autonomous activity that you've configured CQC to undertake. And it always looks the same. The action is always created in the same way, no matter how it's used. So it's a very consistent interface, and you'll see it again and again throughout CQC. And we're just going to dig into it a little bit here. For this test, we will just use a global action. Since it's very simple, it really is nothing but an action. It exists just to allow you to reuse logic that you've created from multiple places, so you can run global actions from other actions. As we've done before, I'm going to just create our own little custom scope here, and I'll just call it mine as I did in the other examples. Call it something more meaningful in your case. Then I'll right click there and hit new file, and we'll just call this one test action. If we double click that, we'll get the editor, and it is very simple. It just shows you the action content here once you've configured some, and we haven't done anything yet, and it has a title, which we don't really need to set, but I'll just set it to test action. And if you use the edit button, you'll then be able to edit the action content. And this is the action editor, which you may have seen before. And it looks the same, as I said, no matter how you are configuring an action or what you are configuring an action for, it always looks the same. And let's just go over the layout quickly here. At the top, there are a set of action events, and there may only be one, as there is in this case. So on the triggering of this particular global action, run it. In other cases, you might have more than one. Say a button on a touch screen, you might have on press, on release, and on click. So it allows you to configure multiple actions for a given source, which in many cases is required. Often it's just one, but sometimes you need more than one. On the left here are a set of buttons that are oriented towards single commands, so you can insert commands and edit them. And at the bottom down here are a set of buttons that are oriented more towards the global content of the action editor. Here in the center, there is a list where the actual actions will go, and we'll see some of those as we begin to configure an action here. And down here are a set of parameters, and those are values that can be passed into any given action for it to act upon, or in some cases for it to give you back information into. And whichever command you've selected up here in the list, you will see the parameters for it down here. And we'll see those also as we begin to configure an action here. So that's the basic layout. And next we'll just go ahead and set up a basic action just to show you how it all works and looks. And we'll come to that next. So now let's take a look at just actually using the action editor. We'll only do some very basic stuff here, and there will be other videos later that will get into more details. But as we discussed before, there are action events. In this case, there's only one, so there's nothing really to select from. And the simplest thing that you could do is just to insert a comment. So if you click comment, it puts a comment in, it selects it, and now we see that the appropriate parameters have shown up down here. And in this case, the only one is just the comment text. So we can just type it in. Of course, you don't have to add comments to your actions. It can, though, make a big difference when 6 months later you want to come make a change to it, just to remember exactly what you were doing. The next most common scenario is to insert a command, a single command, and you do this with the command button. And when you select that, you will get a list of targets. And when you select one of the targets, you will get a list of the actions that it supports, or the commands that it supports. And the commands differ depending on the particular target. Devices, of course, is the one that is used to interact with the devices under CQC's control. So it's generally the most commonly used. System is also very commonly used, and that is for general purpose type functions that don't fall into any of the other ones. And it provides just a lot of utility commands that you'll use quite a bit. But for now, let's just do devices and the most common action command of all, which is probably field write, which writes to a field. And here I'm going to hold down the control button when I do this. And if you see down here, it says hold control to insert new commands after the current selection. So I wanted to put it after the comment. And once we select this one, now we see that there are a different set of action parameters here. And in most cases, these buttons to the left allow you to select the value interactively. In some cases, there might be something you have to type in because only you know the answer. But for the most part, the action editor knows what the possible values are, and where possible it will allow you to select them interactively. So it really minimizes the amount of memory and copy and pasting that's required. So if we click this one, we'll get a dialog box that lets us select a field. So let's just say select family room main light switch. And once we've selected that, now it knows what the possible values are. So we can use the value button, and it knows that it has to be true or false, off or on. So it just provides us with a simple drop down. And now we've basically created a simple action. This is nothing that you would ever really do in a global action. This is so simple it is not worth reuse, but it demonstrates that it's not very difficult to create an actual usable action. Now we can also say copy and paste. So if we select this one, just copy, and then also again I'm going to hold down Control to paste it afterwards, although it didn't really make any difference in this case. It's the same command. And now I can just select this one and we can change the field. So let's do maybe family room niche. So now we have both of the lights in the family room. And this is something maybe that's worth doing as a global action. You just want to turn on all of the lights in the family room. So you could possibly do something like this. Or let's say if you wanted to only turn them on if it were nighttime. Something else we could do is to use the if button. And you notice that when I press if, I get the same list of command targets, but the list of commands tends to be considerably smaller. And this is because some commands just do what they do, and other commands do what they do and return some it worked, it didn't work, or true or false sort of response. And those are the ones that are available to use within an if command. So let's just do a simple one here. We'll do is night. So now we see that we have a if system is night, and there's an end here. So anything that goes between these two commands will only run if it is night. So we could just take these and use the move up button to move those up into that if statement. We would call this a conditional statement because they only run conditionally. If this statement here actually resolves to true, then they will be run. And we can also do if else statements, and these are very common as well. So if one thing, do this, if another thing, do that. I won't actually get too much into it here, but I'll just demonstrate one. So if we do if else, we will get the exact same list of targets and commands, because here again it only shows us those that return a result. So I'll just do another one similar to that. We'll say is weekday. So now we see that we get a actual if else statement inserted for us. In this case, I also forgot to hold down Control again, so we can just move that down, and that just pushes the entire thing out. I won't actually put any commands in here, but you get the idea. And you could also, if you create an if and then you decide, oops, I really wanted that to be an if else, it would be really annoying if you had to delete it and rebuild it again just to make it an if else. But you can just select the end and hit change, and it will turn it into an if else. And if you needed to get rid of that again, you decided no, you don't want it, just highlight it, hit delete. And what it will do when you select delete on a else or an if, it asks, do you really just want to delete that and leave the commands that were inside it, or do you want to delete the conditional and everything inside it? In this case, it doesn't really matter. There's nothing in it. But in many cases, you decide, oops, I want to do those commands, but I don't want them to be conditional. So you just want to delete the conditional and leave the commands inside intact. Another thing you can do with conditional commands is to toggle the meaning of them. So what if you wanted to do if it's not night? There isn't a is not night command, but you can just double click one and it will turn it from if to if not. And you can click it again to go back, or double click it again to go back. So that allows you to get the opposite of whatever the command actually does. So that way we don't have to have commands for is it that and is it not that. That would get quite tedious. So that's it in a nutshell. We'll get much more into this in subsequent videos, but that just demonstrates some of the ways that you can make use of the action editor. And so we'll just save this. Oops, this actually requires a parameter. I'll just get rid of this because we were just demonstrating it anyway. And now we can save that. And here we see the actual content of the action so that we can preview it, not have to bring up the action editor just to see what it is. And we can save this, and it's telling us there are outstanding changes. So yes, let's save that. And that's it. We will pick up this more in subsequent videos.